Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Robert Costa. Speaking of Trump, one of his top allies, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, is rolling out the House GOP agenda today. It's his version of what Speaker Newt Gingrich did in 1994 before he became Speaker with the contract with America. So this is an echo of sorts of that political moment. For more on this, CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killion joins us now from Capitol Hill. And we still have with us Caitlin Huey-Burns here at the desk and Finn Gomez, our political director. Nicole, thanks for joining us. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area tomorrow. Kevin McCarthy has his debut with his own version of a contract with America type document. What are we going to see from House Republicans?
Yeah, that's right. Well, the leader will be joined by a number of House Republicans just outside of the Pittsburgh area, where he is expected to announce House Republicans' midterm agenda, which is dubbed the Commitment to America. In fact, House Republicans were briefed on that plan earlier today on Capitol Hill. I caught up with the leader and asked him for a preview.
What can we expect from your announcement tomorrow, sir?
Well, you're going to get a plan for a new direction for America. It's a commitment to America, rolling out to the American public that they would trust us. These are what we believe put America back on the right track. The economy that's strong, make us energy independent, cut inflation. We'd have a nation that's safe. You know what's happening across this country, secure our border.
So as you heard from the leader there will be a lot of emphasis on trying to strengthen the economy, on security when it comes to the border, as well as dealing with a number of other issues, whether that's free speech, whether that's the issue of government oversight and accountability. Now, one thing I did ask the leader after that question there is how many seats he thinks he can pick up in the House if Republicans take control. He wouldn't put a number on it, just saying that he hopes that they can pick up as many seats as they can. But I also put that same question to former Speaker Newt Gingrich, who was also here on the Hill briefing members. And as you mentioned, Bob was a key architect of the contract with America back in 1994. Here are his projections.
How many seats do you think House Republicans can pick up?
Oh, they're somewhere between 15 and 70.
70?
Depends. If people think about the grocery store, think about the gas station, think about the evening news reports on murders and rapes and robberies, the Democrats have a huge, huge problem.
So the former speaker obviously very bullish on Republicans' chances here in the House. And, you know, what he pointed out was back in 94, he kept referencing this Time magazine article that, kind of underrated Republican chances. And in turn, Republicans ended up flipping the chamber, picking up more than 50 seats. So he feels relatively confident that Republicans will do well, even as we see these projections that show some shrinkage in the margins for House Republicans this fall.
Nicole, stay with us. Really appreciate your reporting on all of this. Finn, when you look back to 1994, Gingrich, as a House Republican leader at the time, was really out front for the GOP in the close of the 94 midterms. This time around, I would argue as a reporter, former President Trump is much more known nationally by Republicans. How does that relationship between Trump and McCarthy play out as the House Republicans debut this plan?
Well, as you know, Bob, the relationship with Trump and with McCarthy is a close one, and you're right. I mean, Newt Gingrich in 1994, 28 years ago, was seen as the architect of this Republican revolution that led the Republicans to unify both houses for the first time in over 50 years. But unlike 1994, where Republicans won a net gain of 54 seats, our projections show that Republicans are looking at a net gain of approximately 12 seats. So not quite as historic, and that could be in part because of Donald Trump, and in part because of some of the sort of impact he's had during this cycle. Early on, Trump was weighing a decision to whether to jump into the 24 race early before the midterms, and it was McCarthy who was one of the people who told him not to, because it would be a referendum on Trump. But with all the headlines and maybe some of the fact that he is the standard bearer for the Republican Party, he is in many ways has become that in some of these crucial battleground states and congressional districts. So it's something to watch, and there is a difference between Newt Gingrich in '94 and Donald Trump in 2022.
Caitlin, what about the closing message from Democrats this time around?
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot working against them, right? They're campaigning as the party in power, right? The midterms are typically a referendum on the party in power. But I think what's different this time around is June 24th, the day that the Supreme Court decision came down. A lot of Democrats I talked to say that is something that flipped the dynamic. Now, whether it does, in fact, sustain themselves through the midterms remains to be seen. But what's interesting I've seen over the past couple of weeks is that Democrats are not only counting on abortion, but they're also going and kind of talking to some of their vulnerabilities. I'm thinking about crime. Here in Washington, we've seen a lot of ads in Virginia. So Abigail Spanberger, for example, she's running ads talking about her law enforcement connections, talking about those credentials, kind of taking that on. I've done a lot of reporting in Maryland as well, where that was a big issue in the governor's race. So there are, to Gingrich's point when he was talking about to Nicole, they know they have to combat these high prices, the issue of crime, and we'll see if they're able to take that on.
And real quick, Nicole, before we let you go, we know you're busy up on Capitol Hill. The Senate Republicans have had a lot of tension on their own message between Senator Rick Scott of Florida, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. How does that contrast with what you're seeing with the House GOP?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that was one of the things coming out of this briefing here on Capitol Hill, whether it was Newt Gingrich or the leader, Kevin McCarthy, and even other members suggesting that, their members are unified behind this message. As you know, there are different entities within the Republican conference, such as the Freedom Caucus, and, the leader suggesting that he didn't hear any pushback from that particular caucus. So, from that standpoint, they are trying to project a sense of unity, which would contrast with what we've seen in the Senate, where there has been this clear divide, as you mentioned, between the minority leader and the NRSC chair, Rick Scott.
Nicole Killion, thank you. Caitlin Huey-Burns, Finn Gomez, you'll be right back with us. And when we